Welcome back. In this video, we are going to look at the 9th step in becoming an effective leader. This step is creating a leadership toolbox. As a leader, there are going to be times when you feel stuck. You feel like you're in a rut. You're facing new problems or new challenges, and you're not sure what to do. In a situation like that, you need a toolbox to go to. So I want to provide a number of tools that have been very useful to me over the years, and I know they'll be useful for you as well. Now, for you, you'll spend the rest of your life adding to this toolbox, but let me give you a few starter tools. Let's look at the first one. Remember, leadership is more like a precision strike than a carpet bomb. All right. So it's not like, hey, we're just going to do everything, gets the same amount of attention. We're just going to try to knock out everything. No, we want to use our time and our energy and resources for precision strikes. As the leader, not everything produces the same amount of results. A few things give far greater return than other things. This goes back to the 80-20 principle. 20% of your actions are going to produce 80% of your results. So as a leader, how can you be intentional and mindful on what you're spending your time with? I want you to think through this. There are things that you're spending a lot of time on that probably are not producing much results. Cut that stuff out. That's one of the tools in your toolbox. Cut out the 80% of your activity that's only producing 20% and spend that extra time on the 20% of your activities that's producing 80% of your results. One tool that we've mentioned in a previous video is the Covey's 4 quadrants. The 4 quadrants, they go like this. There are things that are important and urgent. There are things that are important and not urgent. There are things that are not important and urgent, and there are things that are not important and not urgent. You want to increasingly spend your time on that second quadrant, things that are important but not urgent. Taking a new initiative, improving things, encouraging people. These are things that are incredibly important, but they're not necessarily urgent. Likewise, you want to increasingly decrease the 4th and 3rd quadrant. The 4th quadrant are things that are not important and they're not urgent. These are waste of time things. Nobody's asking for it and it's not important. This is when we're scrolling on the internet. We're looking at things on the internet when we should be working. These are quadrant 4. We need to eliminate those things. Whereas quadrant 3 are things that are urgent but are not important. This is you receiving a sales phone call. It's urgent because the phone's ringing, but it's not important. You, as a leader, need to figure out how you can reduce that. Why? Because you don't have enough time to do everything, but you do have enough time to do what you're supposed to do. So we've got to make precision strikes as a leader. Your time is going to be your most valuable asset. So be very, very wise in how you spend your time. I want to encourage you, here's a workable, actionable tool to do a time study. A time study is where you take a spreadsheet and you create on that spreadsheet the various hours during the day. So if you start your day at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., let that be the first cell, and then do a cell for every 30 minutes or hour, and go all the way until you go to sleep at night. And then track your time, what you're primarily spending that 30 minutes or hour on, and write it in that cell. And then have one of these for every day of the week. When you do this, you're going to realize that you spent way more time on things that you didn't think you spent time on. And you might realize that you didn't spend nearly as much time on some of the things that were really important to you. Doing a time study will reveal low-hanging fruit on how you can become a better user of your time. A time study will reveal how you can become a more effective leader in how you use your time. The next tool is the question. What's holding me or my team back? If you ever feel stuck, if you ever feel like, hey, things just aren't growing, we're not hitting our goals, you need to have a brainstorming session. You can start off by just brainstorming it by yourself, but at some point you're going to need to bring others involved as well. Just put on the board what's really holding us back, and then let people be honest. Most likely, there are people on your team that are seeing problems that you've not seen yet. Likewise, you're seeing problems that other people on the team hasn't seen. So if you feel stuck, have a brainstorming session asking what's really holding us back. Why? Because healthy things grow. And if we're not growing, it means something is unhealthy here. Let's identify it. Next tool, 2 gas pedals. As a leader, you're the driver, and there are 2 pedals. You've got the gas pedal and you've got the brake pedal. And as the leader, you cannot push both at the same time, okay? And at any given time, you need to know when you hit the gas pedal or hit the brake pedal. Let me explain this metaphor. Our gas pedal, this is like the mission. So there are times when, as a leader, we perceive that, hey, now's the time to push hard. Let's get a lot of hay in the barn, as they say. Now's the time to work hard. It's time to push. And then there are going to be other times when it's like, hey, I'm just perceiving as the leader, I'm feeling that our team is tired. I need to let off the gas pedal for a little bit. I need to hit the brake pedal. In this metaphor, the brake pedal is like the morale pedal. This is where, like, hey, man, we've been pushing really hard for a while. We've done some incredible things. I perceive that we're getting a little worn out right now. There's a little fatigue on the team. And so for the next couple of days, we're going to let off the gas pedal. We're going to do some fun things. We're going to go do a fun outing together, or we're going to go out to a restaurant, and we're going to let the organization pay for that meal. We're going to find ways to really just boost the morale of the team for the next few hours or the next few days. And then once we feel like we're recharged, we'll lay back on the pedal, the gas pedal. You, as the leader, get to decide the team's pedals, which one's being pushed. You need to perceive when it's time to hit the gas pedal for mission or when to hit the brake pedal to increase morale. The next tool is momentum curves. So as a leader, you can actually see into the future. Here's what I mean by that. As a leader, you know that each big initiative that you have has its own bell curve. Let me explain. Let's say that you're going to release a new product, and because of that, you and your team is really excited. There's a lot of momentum. People are working really hard to get that ready. Well, imagine a bell curve, and at the very top of the bell curve is when that product is going to be released. So right now, you're doing all the work getting ready for that. Momentum is starting to build, and then right there at the top is when the product is actually released. Now, after the product is released, all the momentum starts to kind of slowly and then quickly go away. Now, as a leader, you can see into the future. You know that's going to happen. That product is going to be launched, and then momentum is going to begin dying down. So as a leader, here's what you need to do. As you're beginning to come near the top of this momentum curve, you need to start a new momentum curve. What do I mean? So you know that the product launch is right around the corner, maybe it's a few days or a couple weeks out. Go ahead and announce the next big initiative. So as momentum's building here, it begins to peak as the product is launched, and now it's working on the next momentum curve. If you'll do this, if you can start going from one exciting event to the next, to the next, to the next, you can build a significant amount of momentum and excitement on your team. Now, as a leader, you need to be thinking, what are those next initiatives? Budget them out. Don't do all of your initiatives or all your big projects at once. Just kind of string them out a little bit so you can just keep building momentum like this. All right. The next tool you need is how to make decisions. As a leader, you're going to make a lot of decisions. That's part of your job. So here's 3 questions to ask anytime you need to make a decision. The first question, what is the easy thing versus what is the right thing? Many times the right thing is not the easy thing. So your alarm clock goes off. What's easy versus what's right? Do we hit the snooze button or do we get up and attack the day? The second question is what's good for the short term versus what's good for the long term. Many times there's pressure on us to do what's good for the short term at the expense of the long term. As a leader, when you're making decisions, as much as possible, make decisions that are good for the long term. And the third question is what's good for the one versus what's good for the many. Many times you're going to have people, they come to you, they make a request, and it would be good for them, but it would be to the detriment of the whole team or the organization. So as you're making a team, as much as possible, make decisions that are good for the many. So let's recap. Next time you make a decision, ask yourself these 3 questions. What's easy versus what's right? What's good for the short term versus the long term? What's good for the few versus the many? Your next leadership tool is how to introduce change. The next time you have to introduce a change. Change is stressful for most people. Even good changes can be stressful. Something that can help you introduce change to your team is to use trial-based language. Here's what I mean. Let's say you want to try out a new software, and that may be a stressful change for some people on your team. So instead of coming out and saying like, hey, we're going to do this new software, that's the way it is, I've made an executive decision, try it this way instead. Say, hey, I think this is going to make us a better team. I think it's going to help our effectiveness. We're going to try this new software for 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, we'll have a conversation about it. If we feel like it's working, great. If we feel like it's been a total train wreck, we'll go back to the way we currently do it. So give me 4 weeks. Let's try this for 4 weeks. If you'll introduce big changes using trial-based language, you're going to find that most people are agreeable. Most people want the team to do better. And if they're hearing you say that you think this is going to work and that we're going to try it for a few weeks, and if it doesn't work, we'll go back to the way it is, many people will be supportive of the new idea. The next leadership tool you need is how to deal with stress. As a leader, you're going to become very familiar with stress. You probably already know that. So what do we do about it? Well, most of our stress is going to be related to people. And I want to share something with you about people. It doesn't matter what your context is. It doesn't matter what your team looks like. I already know something about your team. It's called 89-10-1. 89-10-1. Here's what I know. 89% of people on every team, 89% of people in every group are generally agreeable. They will, in general, go along with your idea, with your plan. They'll generally like you and like the way that you're leading. 10% of people will never agree with you. 10% of the people are always going to find a problem. 10% of the people are going to, like when you say, let's go left, they're going to say, no, let's go right. And then 1% of people are just insane, okay? You're going to say, let's go left, and they're going to say, no, we prefer spaghetti. It just doesn't make sense. And that's just the way that pretty much every group of people is. 89% of people are agreeable, 10% of people are disagreeable, and 1% of the people are just kind of wild, okay? So the sooner you figure that out, the better you'll be able to sleep at night, because there are going to be people where they're complaining and they're just constantly disagreeing with you. And you just need to know that if it seems like about 10% of the people are disagreeing with you, then you're probably doing it right. All right. So don't be discouraged if you hear a complaint here or there. Why? Because 10% of the people are disagreeable and 1% is just, again, kind of insane. Now, other ways of dealing with stress. Watch your self-talk. Remember, everything you say to yourself is not true. You need to speak truth to yourself. Maybe you're hearing yourself saying, hey, this isn't worth it. You're not a good leader. Just give up, whatever. Hey, don't listen to that. Speak truth to yourself. Or maybe you're hearing self-talk that says that, hey, that person on your team, they're no good. They can't ever do anything right. Watch that. That's not helpful. Speak truth about yourself and speak truth about other people in your self-talk. Watch the self-talk. Watch that voice in your head and be sure it's healthy. Remember, sometimes you just got to say, hey, that's not true. Your emotions, your feelings, they're important, and those emotions and feelings make great advisors, but they make horrible governors. We don't let how we feel determine how we act. Instead, we are intentional with how we act. Other ways of dealing with stress is exercising and eating right. Find a fun way to exercise. If you hate running, don't go for a run. Instead, go swimming or cardio boxing or lifting weights. Find a way to exercise. Find a way to eat right. I want to encourage you to get professional counseling. If you are going to lead others, you got to learn how to lead yourself. I make it a point to see a professional counselor at least once a month when things are good. If things are particularly bad, I may see my counselor more often. There's a stigma sometimes with counseling. Sometimes people think like, well, only the worst of the worst go to see a counselor. That's not true. Going to counseling is like going to the gym. At the gym, yes, you're going to see some people who are at the end of their rope health-wise, and they're just kind of doing a last effort to get healthy. But then you're also going to see the healthiest and strongest people in the community at the gym. Same thing with a counselor. Yes, there are going to be people who waited way too long to get help, but then you're also going to see the strongest and healthiest emotional and mental people in your community getting help. If you're going to lead others, you got to lead yourself. See a counselor on a regular basis. Journal out your thoughts. When you get stressed, journal out your thoughts. If you're like me, there's all these things, all these thoughts and all these ideas running through my mind, or concerns or things I'm worried about. Hey, sit down, write that stuff out. It's very therapeutic and it will help you think more clearly. Next way to deal with stress is get together with a group of peers, people who do similar work in other environments, and ask them, like, hey, I'm having this challenge. Am I making a mountain out of a molehill? What's going on here? And they'll give you feedback. They'll say, no, that really isn't a big deal. Or yes, that is a big deal, but let me tell you how I've handled that in the past. The next leadership tool I want us to look at is, what do we do when we feel unmotivated? This is going to happen to all of us sooner or later. So let's look at a few tools on what to do when you feel unmotivated. The first tool is to just remind yourself of, why do I do what I do? Many times we become unmotivated because we've taken our eyes off of the why and we started looking at the what or the how too closely. So next time you feel unmotivated, get a journal, get a pen, go to a coffee shop, find a quiet place, and begin writing out why you got into this in the first place. Why does this work matter to you or to others? Or why should this work matter to the world? So next time you feel unmotivated, the first thing you can do is spend some quality time thinking through why you do what you do. The next thing you can do when you feel unmotivated is remember 3 words. I actually got these 3 words from Anthony Robbins. He talks about this. It's been so helpful for me over the years. I have it as a recurring calendar entry. I look at it every week, and those 3 words are this: state, story, strategy. State, story, strategy. State, what is your physical state? So if you're feeling unmotivated, is it because there's something wrong physically? Maybe you need to get outside and take a 15-minute walk. Maybe that will actually make you feel more motivated. Maybe you need a cup of coffee. Maybe you need to eat lunch or a snack. Next time you feel unmotivated, ask yourself, what's my physical state? The second word is story. What story are you telling yourself? Is the video in your head, is it just telling you like, hey, this isn't worth it. This is going to take forever. This is going to be a really crummy thing to do. This is going to be painful. I just don't feel like it. Or is your story more positive? So those days when you feel unmotivated, you're probably telling yourself some sort of story. Change the story. Tell yourself a more positive story. Remind yourself why it's important. Remind yourself of the rewards and the benefits of doing this. Change the story in your mind when you feel unmotivated. And the third word is strategy. What is your strategy to complete the work? Sometimes we feel unmotivated because we're really not sure what to do next. We're not really clear on our next step. You may be feeling unmotivated because the task ahead of you is sort of nebulous or confusing. So take time and come up with your strategy. For me, it looks like this. If I wake up one day and I am not feeling particularly motivated, I ask myself, what's my physical state? Do I need another cup of coffee? Am I telling myself a positive story? And do I have a strategy in mind? So my strategy may be, let's get to the office by 8 a.m. The first thing I'm going to work on for 30 minutes is that big initiative. The second thing I'm going to do when I get to the office, I'm going to check in with that person on my team, and then so on and so on. When I develop a strategy for how I'll complete my work for the day, I find myself becoming more motivated. So those 3 words: state, story, strategy. The next thing I want you to look at when you're feeling unmotivated is actually just something to remember. Remember this: what you do on days when you don't feel like it is a better indicator of how successful you'll become. Again, we all have days where we don't feel motivated. Those who become mediocre leaders, when they don't feel like it, they don't do the good thing. Great, exceptional leaders, they do the right thing even on days when they don't feel like it. Now, don't get me wrong. We all need rest. We all need a day just to kick back and to relax, but be intentional with that. So say there's a day coming up. I'm intentionally going to be lazy that day. I'm intentionally just going to have some fun. But don't be the person who wakes up one day and says, you know what? I had plans to do these things. I'm just not in the mood, so I'm not going to do it. Mediocre leaders determine their day by how they feel. Exceptional leaders pre-plan what they're going to spend their time on. They're strategic with how they spend their time, and they carry through with it regardless of how they feel. Next, when you're feeling unmotivated, you may find yourself in a nosedive. You wake up late, and then you just kind of lay in bed, not doing anything productive, and then you don't eat breakfast, and then instead of reading something helpful, you just scroll on Facebook, and before you know it, you got this like nosedive, and you just feel less and less and less motivated. Next time you find yourself in a nosedive in motivation, break out of it by doing one healthy thing. So let's say you woke up late and then you squandered time in bed, and then instead of eating a healthy, nutritious breakfast, you ate junk food. What should you do? Go take a walk, or do some productive work, or go eat like a vegetable. Break out of the nosedive by doing one healthy thing. It's incredible how we can break out of the nosedive so easily by just doing the next right thing. The next time you feel unmotivated, do the Pomodoro method. The Pomodoro method is a way of accomplishing tasks. So it looks like this. It revolves around a timer. Either get an electronic timer, perhaps on your phone, or a physical timer, and set it to 25 minutes. When you're feeling unmotivated, tell yourself you're going to sit in front of your computer or whatever task you're doing, and you're not going to get up for 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, set your timer for 5 minutes. This is free time. You can do with it whatever you want. After the 5-minute break, set your timer again for 25 minutes and repeat. Even if you don't feel like it, you're going to sit there and you're not going to get up until that 25-minute timer goes off. The Pomodoro method is either a 30-minute, 60-minute, or 120 minutes. So depending on the size of your task, say, hey, I'm going to sit there for 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break, or I'm going to do 2 cycles of that, or I'm going to do 4 cycles of that. I have found that when I'm feeling unmotivated, I'm feeling uninspired, I don't feel like working, I set my Pomodoro timer, and then I sit there for 25 minutes, and usually around the halfway mark, I actually start finding the motivation coming back. Maybe I feel like I've got zero creativity, but if I'll just sit there and look at the work, before long, the motivation starts returning. The next thing I want us to look at for a leadership tool is authority. Everyone on your team who has authority has some version of this. There's 4 types of authority. There's veto authority, there's point authority, there's input authority, and there's information authority. So let me give you a for instance. You're a leader. Maybe you are the positional leader for your team. You have veto authority, meaning you're not running point on the project, you're not in charge of the product or the project, but because of your role, you can call a timeout. You can call a veto. You can say, hey, I know that this is your project, but because of my experience, because of something I'm seeing that you're not seeing, I've got to veto this. I'm afraid if we move forward on this, it's actually going to hurt the team in some way. So that's veto authority. The other type of authority is point authority. This is the person who's in charge of that project. Maybe they're not in charge of the whole team, but they are in charge of something on the team. They get to make the call on how that thing moves forward. They get to make the decisions on how that project happens. That's point authority. The next one is input authority. Maybe they certainly don't have veto authority. Maybe they don't have point authority, but because of their role in the team, they should have input authority. Maybe they don't get to make the final call, but they should have a right to speak into that process. The 4th type of authority is information authority. These are people, again, they don't have veto authority, they don't have point authority, they really don't even have the right to speak into how a decision will be made, but they should be told what decision was made. They should be told information around this project. So one of the things you can do as a leader right now is you can ask yourself, for each project, who has what authority on my team? Who has veto authority over that project? Who is running point on that project? Who's got input authority? Who's got information authority? If you'll do that, you'll find your team becoming more effective. Next, an incredible leadership tool is called a FACE chart. And the FACE chart stands for FAC. There's no E, but we call it the FACE chart. The FAC stands for this: Function Accountability Chart. Here's what you need to do. Take your work, take your project, whatever you're working on, and you need to list out every function. Every function. So let me give a for instance. Let's just say you run an accounting company. You need to take whatever functions you have within your work. Maybe one of the functions is managing the office. Maybe one of the functions is getting new clients. Maybe one of the functions is running the bookkeeping for your accounting office. List out all of the functions. The second thing you need to do is you need to be sure that one person and one person only is running point for each of those functions. Here's what you're going to learn when you create a face chart. You're going to see that there are certain functions where multiple people are in charge. Let me say this right now. If 2 or more people are in charge, no one's in charge. Things will fall through the cracks because they assume someone else will handle it. So when you create a face chart for the first time, you're likely to realize that there are certain functions where several people are actually in charge. And I can tell you right now, that is already causing stress and chaos on your team. The second thing you're going to learn is that there are functions, even important functions, where nobody is in charge of it. Nobody is running point on it. There may be something actually quite important about your team, or it's constantly sneaking up on you in some way because nobody has been assigned to run point on that. So one of the quickest ways that you could become a more effective leader today is to create a face chart. Be sure you list out all the different functions of your team, and then make sure that you have one and one only person running point for each of those functions. This is a great list of leadership tools. I want to encourage you to keep adding to these tools. When you're reading books, when you're taking seminars, when you are just learning throughout the day, when you're talking to mentors, if you come across a tool, something that can help you solve a problem, something that can help you solve a challenge, something that can help you take advantage of an opportunity, I want to encourage you to create a running list of your leadership tools. You need a great toolbox as a leader. There are times when, as a leader, I start feeling stuck. I feel like I don't have a lot of creativity. I'll pull out my leadership toolbox, a list of tools I use, and it's incredible how creativity starts kind of like flowing in me and through me as I look through my leadership tools. So you've got a great start here. Keep adding to your leadership toolbox, and I'll see you in the next video.